We are saying that education reform must outlast administrations, align agencies, and be sustained across budget cycles. In the same way that fiscal policy is guided by a medium-term framework, education reform must be anchored on a long-term evidence-based plan. The resolution identifies priority areas for reform, among them early childhood development, classroom congestion, learning recovery, teacher support, digital connectivity, stronger school to employment pathways, and closer alignment between education and labor market needs. These priorities are not aspirational slogans. They are grounded in data, shaped by experience, responsive to the realities faced daily by our learners and teachers. Equally important, this resolution recognizes the role of Congress beyond legislation. It explicitly anchors this plan as a guide for our legislative agenda, budget deliberations, appropriations, and oversight functions. It urges the executive branch to align policies and programs accordingly, while fully respecting institutional mandates and fiscal sustainability. In short, this resolution affirms that education reform is not the responsibility of one agency alone, nor of one sector or one administration. It is a whole of government and whole of nation commitment that demands consistency, coordination, accountability over the long term. This is a moment for the Senate to lead with foresight. By adopting this resolution, we are not merely endorsing a report, we are committing to a decade of deliberate, evidence-based reform that places our learners, our teachers, the future workforce at the center of national development. I respectfully, therefore, urge the adoption of Senate Concurrent Resolution number 09. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, may we recognize our distinguished colleague, Senator Joel Villanueva.
Senator
Also
Joel
co-sponsored.
Villanueva is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished Majority Leader. Mr. President, dear colleagues, education reform demands long-term vision. Its results are not immediate, but enduring. As the saying goes, great men plant trees whose shade they will never enjoy. This resolution reflects that kind of leadership, that one that looks beyond political cycles and commits to continuity and coherence in policy. And that is why we rise today, Mr. President, in support of this resolution, which we filed together with our dear colleague, Senator Loren Legarda, adopting the National Education and Workforce Development Plan and the recommendations of the Second Congressional Commission on Education as the 10-year policy framework of the national government. The National Education and Workforce Development Plan to 2026 to 2035 provides a clear and strategic roadmap to address the country's learning crisis, anchored on concrete and measurable goals. It sets ambitious targets, Mr. President, such as achieving 95% proficiency in basic reading by grade 3 and improving grade 12 learning outcomes toward 90% proficiency by 2035. It calls for strengthening foundational learning, expanding access to early childhood education, ending mass promotion, and aligning education with workforce needs so that our learners are not only educated, but truly prepared for work and life. By anchoring national education and workforce reforms on EDCOM2's evidence-based recommendations, Mr. President, dear colleagues, we invest not for ourselves, but for future generations. Mr. President, dear colleagues, ito po ay para sa pagpapataas ng antas ng edukasyon sa Pilipinas. Maraming salamat po and may God bless us all.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is our distinguished colleague, Senator Win Gatchalian.
An objection, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader. Good afternoon, colleagues. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise today to co-sponsor and express my full support for Senate Concurrent Resolution number 8. The work of the Second Congressional Commission on Education is not only a testament to a passion for education, but also to rigor, the value of empirical research and data-driven decision-making. Despite many well-intentioned reforms in the past, our education sector has suffered from conflicting policies and programs that don't last beyond a single administration. Without a clear long-term policy framework, initiatives risk being diluted before the country feels their full impact. In this regard, EDCOM 2's body of work speaks for itself. Over the course of 3 years, the Commission has diagnosed the deepest systemic problems affecting the education sector, and their work has been pivotal in the creation of landmark legislation. Some notable examples are the Early Childhood Care and Development Systems Act, as well as the Expanded Tertiary Education Equivalency and Accreditation Program, and the Lifelong Learning Development Framework Act, both of which expand the philosophy, scope, and opportunities for learning beyond college and promote the acquisition of skills and knowledge well into adult life. EDCOM 2 also endorsed the Basic Education, Mental Health, and Well-Being Promotions Act and the Academic Recovery and Accessible Learning Program Act as a way of strengthening the foundational learning. These examples show that EDCOM 2's work touches the entire spectrum of learners and learning environments. EDCOM 2 recently launched its final report, and within it is the National Education Workforce Development Plan. It contains 20 priority recommendations designed to address the nation's learning crisis. It is backed by rigorous study, concrete performance targets, and incremental investments in education over the course of the next decade. I fully support the call to make the National Education and Workforce Development Plan, as well as the recommendations of the Second Congressional Commission on Education, as the 10-year policy framework of the national government. Not only are its findings comprehensive and data-driven, but the Commission's work has a track record of success. The ARAL program, for example, has yielded some early wins. Malanday Elementary School in Marikina City, learners in Key Stage 1, grades 1 to grades 3, showed significant improvements in reading, math, and science. Learners' performance improved from 57.26% at the start of the year to 94.03% by the middle of the year, an increase of almost 37%. In the 2026 national budget, the ARAL program received 8.9 billion pesos in funding. Isa ito sa mga bagay na ipinaglaban natin sa ating makasaysayang budget sa edukasyon. Early this month, the Department of Education reported that reading readiness scores of more than 3 million learners in grades 3 to 6 improved by approximately 5 points. The scores of learners in grades 7 to 10 increased by 6 points, improving the proficiency of 1.72 million learners. Gains like this must be sustained over time and complemented by reforms in policy design so that problems are given paramount solutions. The National Education and Workforce Development Plan is precisely that framework. Before I end, I would like to thank my fellow senators for all their hard work and support, in particular Senator Bam Aquino, Chairperson of the Senate Committee on Education. Let us continue to work together so that no learner is left behind. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Winnie Gatchalian. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, may we also recognize the distinguished colleague, Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan, to co-sponsor the measure.
Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I rise to co-sponsor Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 8, which seeks to adopt the National Education and Workforce Development Plan 2026 to 2035 as the 10-year policy framework of the national government based on the findings and recommendations of EDCOM 2. Ang dokumentong ito ay kolektibong pag-amin na kumbagay nanghihingalo na ang ating sistema ng edukasyon at kailangan na nating kolektibong manindigan na ibangon at ayusin ito. Kinukumpirma ng EDCOM 2 ang mga matagal ng problema ng ating sistema sa edukasyon. Punong-puno ang mga classroom. Pagod na pagod ang mga teacher at mga estudyante pumapasa kahit halos walang natututunan. Malinaw ang sinasabi ng resolusyon. Dapat nang isalba ang naghihingalong sektor ng edukasyon. Batayan ng kinabukasan ng buong bansa ang edukasyon. Kapag hindi nakakabasa ang batang nasa grade 3 o hindi makagawa ng basic math ang nasa high school, sinusumpa natin sa pagkakakulelat ang ating mga anak at ang ating bansa. Bawat taon na pinatatagal ang reforma, sinusumpa natin ang ating mga kabataan sa isang kinabukasang mahirap ang trabaho, mababa ang sweldo o kita. Sinusumpa na rin nating maiiwan tayo ng mas maunlad nating mga karatig bansa. Ginagawang mandato ng EDCOM 2 ang mga ebidensya. Mahihinang pundasyon sa mga unang taon ng ating mga mag-aaral, kulang-kulang na suporta sa ating mga guro, at isang sistemang ginagantimpalaan ang pagsunod sa alituntunin, hindi ang actual learning o pagkatuto. Sa ating pagpapatibay ng resolusyong ito, sinasabi nating nakikinig tayo sa ebidensya at tinatanggap natin ang responsibilidad sa pag-ayos ng sistema. Hindi lang sisihan. Lumilikha ang resolusyong ito ng pangmatagalang roadmap na hindi lang nalilimita sa isang administrasyon o pangulo, kalihim o mambabatas. Tatagal ng isang dekada ang mga mungkahing reforma sa edukasyon. At inaangkla natin ang mga reforma sa isang malinaw, time-bound na plano sa pagpapatibay ng parehong kapulungan ng Kongreso. Binibigyan natin ang buong sistema ng pagkakataong lumaban kahit mag-iba-iba pa ang hangin ng politika, ika nga. Tapos na ang trabaho ng EDCOM 2, umpisa na ang trabaho natin. Itutugma na natin ang mga pangako sa ilalaang budget. Ipapatupad na natin ang mga batas na magbabangon at magpapatibay ng ating sistemang edukasyon. Naumpisahan na natin ang mga sumusunod. Mas mataas na puhunan para sa early childhood nutrition, lalo na sa first 1,000 days ng ating mga mag-aaral sa pamamagitan ng school-based feeding program at supplemental feeding program. Ang madali ang pagtugon sa mga backlog sa classroom at kasikipan ng mga paaralan sa pamamagitan ng public-private partnerships at yung classroom acceleration program. At ang pagtaas hanggang 4% ng GDP ang budget para sa edukasyon. Marami pang reforma ang kailangan ma-institutionalize, pero tagos sa lahat ng mga mungkahing ito ang paglinis sa burokrasyang literal na ninanakaw ang pondong nakalaan para sa ating mga mag-aaral at mga guro. Ninanakaw ang kinabukasan ng bawat isa sa atin. Ninanakaw ang kinabukasan ng Pilipinas. Sa pamamagitan ng ating sama-samang pagkilos, walang problema na hindi natin maaring malagpasan. Salamat, Ginoong Pangulo. Salamat mga kasama. Magandang hapon sa kanilang lahat.
Thank you, Senator Pangilinan. Majority Leader.
Sure. Yes, thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to recognize Senator Pia Cayetano also to co-sponsor the measure, and after which the minority leader as well would like to.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today I rise to manifest my support for Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 8, or the concurrent resolution adopting the National Education and Workforce Development Plan 2026 to 2035 and recommendations of the Second Congressional Commission on Education as the 10-year policy framework of the national government. As a background, this representation as chairperson of the Committee on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovations, Futures Thinking, had hearings and later filed a committee report in the 18th Congress entitled The Future of Education. This report recognized that leaders in futures thinking had already foreseen the challenges brought about by the COVID pandemic. It also noted the reality that students have different skills and learning abilities. The committee report sought to provide direction and foresight to ensure the flexibility and responsiveness of the country's education system, especially due to volatilities, uncertainties, complexities, and ambiguities of the future, and allow learners to adapt to new careers and skills required for the future. The National Education and Workforce Development Plan is anchored on the fact that success in the 21st century is no longer defined by a single degree or fixed career path. It recognizes a simple but powerful reality. We can no longer plan education jobs based only on the past or even the present. We must plan for the future. What our people need are transferable skills such as critical thinking, digital literacy, problem solving, creativity, collaboration, and adaptability, which allows them to thrive amid constant change. We must ensure that our education system deliberately develops these skills so Filipinos are not only employable today, but resilient and competitive in the future of work. I strongly support this plan because it acknowledges that technical skills alone are no longer enough. Workers must be able to learn continuously, shift careers when needed, and apply existing knowledge in new contexts. That is why emphasis on lifelong learning, reskilling, and upskilling is so crucial. Equally important is the focus on coordination across agencies such as DepEd, TESDA, and CHED towards a shared vision for Philippine education. Among the priority reforms identified in the EDCOM 2 final report, which I have consistently supported as Vice Chair for Finance handling the budget of the Department of Education and its attached agencies for 6 years, include the following: early childhood nutrition, training and capacity building of child development workers and child development teachers, access of early childhood education, procurement of textbook, address classroom backlog and congestions in schools, expansion of programs for learners with disabilities, and support for teachers and professionals in inclusive education. To conclude, this is about future-proofing our people, ensuring that Filipinos are not left behind as industries evolve and new forms of work emerge. Taken together, these reforms underscore a clear and consistent message. The foundation of a future-ready workforce begins early, as strengthened in our schools, and are sustained through inclusive and responsive education systems. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Pia Cayetano, Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we recognize the distinguished minority floor leader, Senator Alan Cayetano, Mr. President.
Tayong lahat. But like many things, yung approach. So may I just put on record my personal approach. The first book I believe in is, of course, the Bible. And the Bible tells us that each and every one of us is made in the image and nature of God. Ibig sabihin ko, anong DNA ng Panginoon? Yun din ang DNA natin. Therefore, learning, continuous learning, improvement of oneself is one of the most important aspects of being human, being God's children. The Bible is a book of power and principle. Ang principle, kung anong ating itatanim, yun ang ating aanihin. So hindi natin pwedeng sabihin, kukunti ang ating itatanim sa edukasyon, tapos malaki aanihin natin. Hindi natin pwedeng sabihin, mangga itatanim natin, santo lang ating ang magiging bunga. In that area, Mr. President, of course, I recognize the Senate presidency of Senator Soto, of Senator Win Gatchalian, of this whole chamber in may I call it the best education budget since the 1987 Constitution. But of course, we have to be able to judge something based on potential. potentially, the whole 500 billion na tinanggal sa DPWH ay pwedeng nilagay sa education. But of course, that's not the call of just this chamber nor Senator Gatchalian. Diba? It's the call of House, Senate, the persuasive power of media of Malacanang. So we're not pointing fingers, but we're also part of the decisions we make. Diba? The decisions we made the last 30 years. Every decision we make, may mabuti, may masama. So when President Cory decided na libre na ang high school, it was a beautiful decision. It was a wonderful decision. But we couldn't afford it at the time. Pero sabi niya, since maganda, gawin natin. So doon nagsimula yung mass promotion. So marami nga doon na grade 6, hindi pa marunong magbasa, pinasa sa first year, so forth. Diba? Finally, nung panahon ni President Pinoy, humabol tayo. Hindi exactly, but almost sapat na yung mga classroom. And he made another beautiful decision, which is dagdagan ng K muna. Wala daw K yung education natin. K as in kindergarten. No? Ang problema, being married to a mayor, we didn't have the classrooms. So yung classrooms ng grade 1, 2, and then nag-rush ng classrooms. So doon pa lang nakita na natin may problema. K pa lang dinagdag natin, hindi pa yung 2, problematic na. But the persuasive powers of Senator Ed Angara, of Brother Armin, of course, the President Pinoy oozing with sincerity na maayos ito, persuaded us that they will put the money and make it available. Senator Recto, who is now ES, told us that's 250 billion from the pocket of students and parents and 250 billion from the pockets of government every year. Until the pandemic, medyo na-survive natin yan. In fact, when Senator Coco and Senator Soto was also, Senator Coco was, and of course Senator Soto was Senate President noon, may discussion di ba, kung i-abolish yung K-12. But our secretary noon was against it na persuade si President Duterte na wag. And in fact, na-persuade pa nga siya na free na rin yung college. At least scholarship sa mga state universities. So in terms of intention, Mr. President, I do not doubt the intention of all of these authors of EDCOM, Senator Lawrence sa Higher Ed and Technical Ed, Senator Bam sa Basic Ed, Secretary Sani, President Marcos. Lahat yan maganda intention. But I'll go to the second book, the Constitution. We complied substantially with the Constitution na highest ang education. In DepEd alone, pag dinagdag mo pa yung higher ed, yung local governments, yung paggasto sa malaki talaga. But Mr. President, I rise today to put this on record. Maganda yung 10-year plan, I support it. Maganda po ang findings ng EDCOM 2, yung first, second, and third publication. But the big elephant in the room, until we decide to either fully fund it, and it will take hundreds of billions, or. So either yakapin natin yung K-12 ng buong buo at ilagay natin yung additional few hundred billions plus the effort needed, or we make K-11 or K-10 muna. Habang we are half-hearted, I think, I don't want to use, Mr. President, I don't want to use half-hearted kasi tumotodo naman tayo But ang punto ko po, kung hanggang 100 kilometers ang takbo ng kotse at kaya natin mag 100 kilometers, no one can say na half-hearted tayo. Pero kung hanggang 200 kilometers ang takbo ng kotse at sabihin natin, boss, hanggang 120 lang kaya natin, yung 80 hindi. Yung potential na 80, half-hearted. So we're not half-hearted not because we're not putting everything we can, but because the system that the world has imposed upon us. When we passed this, it was because of pressure na sa Europe, sa US, and most other countries have K-12, pero nagbabago na po talaga. Ang Vietnam na unahan na tayo. Even then, there were 2 or 3 countries who had better systems than the rest of the world, pero K-10 sila. So, Mr. President, may I just put that at the doorstep or at the feet of our honorable senators and decision makers. Yes, let's do everything we can. Better budget for 2027, full implementation 2026, 10-year plan. But sooner or later, hindi natin pwedeng hindi pag-usapan. K-11 ba muna tayo? K-12 muna? K-12, K-11, K-10? Or fully funding it? Yung 10-year plan na yan is based on present situations, present economic situation, world standards, value ng ating peso, dollar, simento, time, effort, and even the attention span of children. Remember nung lumabas tong problema na to ng reading 3 hours, reading, writing, arithmetic. Hindi na totoong R, pero yun ang tawag ng bata tayo, SP, di ba? Reading, writing, arithmetic. Wala ka pang social media. So ang sabi lang nila alam nyo, pare, may konting pastor, konting influence. Parents, malaki influence. Barkada, mas malaking influence. At TV ang may influence. Mr. President, the reality is most in highly urbanized cities, half day ang pasok. Half day ang pasok. Ang biggest influence ngayon po ay yung screen ng kanyang cellphone. And unfortunately, most of the time, it is not educational. So, Mr. President, until we have classes that are 7 to 3 or 8 to 4, and until our schools have basketball courts, volleyball courts, chess tournaments, debate club, ballet, martial arts, i-accelerate natin paggawa ng classroom. Walang lupa So every classroom na itatayo mo, meron mawawala na track and field or na covered court, or magigiba ka ng 4-story to make a 10-story. Pero in the meantime, lalong lumala kasi yung 4-story. Maraming cities, wala ng lupa na mabili or it takes so long para magkaroon ng bagong classroom. So kung tatanungin tayo ngayon, effort, AAA po tayo. Outstanding po tayo. Lahat ng effort nilalagay natin. Pero let me end this way. Akala ko biro to pero ginugel ko, totoo talaga. There was this Olympian na ang sinabi sa kanya, hindi niya kailangan ng bullseye. Malapit lang sa bullseye, gold medal na siya. Archery. So nag-target siya, tinignan niya, pause for a minute, binitawan niya, bullseye. Sandali, nagpalakpakan ng tao, biglang tumahimik lahat. Nagtaka siya bakit tumahimik. Tinignan niya, bullseye. Bullseye pala nung katabi niya. Ang tinamaan pala niya, hindi niya bullseye. Doon pala sa target nung katabi niya. Baka naman po yung tinatarget natin K-12 ay target ng Estados Unidos, target ng Europe, target ng ibang ng Japan. Pero sa Pilipinas po, kailangan natin linawin ang ating target. Thank you, Mr. Majority Leader, Mr. Senate President, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Senator Cayetano. Majority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. With that, no other member wishes to sponsor the measure. I move to close the period of sponsorship, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
There are no members who wish to make amendments to the concurrent resolution. I move, Mr. President, we adopt concurrent Senate Resolution number 8, taking consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution number 9. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Before we act on the other, yes, the resolution has been approved. Mr. President, with no other, we will pause for the agenda and recognize our distinguished Senate President for availment of the privilege hour, Mr. President, to give his privileged speech.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the Senate President, Senator Vicente Tito Soto III, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my esteemed colleagues, I beg your indulgence. I really intended to deliver a privileged speech today, but would probably be delivering a full-blown privileged speech on Wednesday. Today, I would rather, after consulting the man in the middle cross, I decided that instead of delivering a privileged speech, I would like to insert into the records of the Senate two two birds with one stone, two topics. Articles written by Father Ranhilio Calangan Aquino and former Senator Francisco Kit Tatad, dated today in the Manila Times. This is hitting two birds with one stone, Mr. President. And I feel that this will be a valuable reference and insight to consider for our colleagues, for future researchers, for scholars, and pertinent committees of the Senate. So I so move that we insert into the record such, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, so inserted into the records.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you,
Majority
Mr.
Leader.
Senate President.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, next on the agenda, we'd like to resume consideration of proposed Senate Resolution number 256. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Resolution number 256 is in order.
May we recognize the distinguished colleague, Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan, to sponsor and to interpolate a distinguished colleague from Tarlac and Pampanga, Senator Rodante Marcoleta.
Senator Francis Pangilinan is recognized, and to interpolate, Senator Rodante Marcoleta.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are ready to respond to the questions and the interpellation of the good senator, my fellow Kapampangan, my kabalin, Senator Marcoleta.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank my colleague from the gentleman from Pampanga and Quezon City for having readily accepted questions from this representation. Mr. President, in the sponsorship speech of the Honorable Senator from Pampanga and Quezon City, he said that the resolution will signal our resolve to prevent China from claiming 500,000 square kilometers of our exclusive economic zone. I'd like to ask the gentleman, Mr. President, where did he get his data of 500,000 square kilometers?
Yes, Mr. President, the data was taken from the computations based on the Philippines 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone, Mr. President, and juxtaposed with the claim of the of China in the 10-dash line, wherein about 90% of the West Philippine Sea, South China Sea, is being claimed by them.
Mr. President, is the gentleman aware that there is a post from the National Security Council of the Philippines saying that our West Philippine Sea is approximately 381,000 square kilometers?
300,000 square kilometers, Mr. President. Are they referring to our exclusive economic zone or our territorial sea, or may we be clarified?
Our exclusive economic zone with respect to the West Philippine Sea, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I'd like to clarify. I'd like to be clarified rather, because the data that was provided us by the advisors to the Philippine delegation to the to the Hague, the International Arbitral Tribunal, provided the amount of approximately about 500,000 square kilometers. So we will have to clarify that. We would like to be clarified, Mr. President, as to the data. But having said that, assuming it's 345,000 square kilometers, that is still double, pretty much, or almost more than, or close to double, our land mass. In other words, it is a huge amount of exclusive economic zone being claimed by China. That we have sovereign rights over our territorial sea, as well as we have exclusive rights over our exclusive economic zone, which includes, as the gentleman has mentioned, at least from his data, 360,000 plus square kilometers. Mas malaki pa sa ating lupain. Kaya hindi maaari nating hayaan na lamang na aangkinin at ng ibang bansa, lalo na ang China.
Mr. President, I'm making this clarification because I would like to believe that the resolution is particularly related to our claim in the South China Sea, part of which is now being called the West Philippine Sea. According to the National Security Council, our exclusive economic zone in relation to that is only 381,000 square kilometers. And that is the principal interest in relation to the sponsorship speech in connection with the resolution under consideration. Mr. President, I would like to correct that because the 500,000 does not exist, Mr. President, because as I will discuss later, in Magaliano versus Ermita, this is a jurisprudence that was penned in relation to the conflicting maritime area in Republic Act 3046 and Republic Act 9522. Our Supreme Court had the opportunity, Mr. President, of adjudicating that our total exclusive economic zone, not only in the West Philippine Sea, but in the other rest of the world, is only 382,669. This is already in the jurisprudence, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, Mr. President. We are currently securing the information that was relayed to us by Justice Carpio. And therefore, assuming for the sake of argument that it is 345,000 square kilometers, it does not remove the fact that that is a huge amount of our economic zone that is being aggressively taken over by China.
The only reason, Mr. President, that I'm trying to specify the exact area of our exclusive economic zone, because the next question is, would the Honorable Senator agree that in law, a claim to land or waters must be defined by metes and bounds?
Mr. President, we, with the indulgence of the good senator, we already have an arbitrary ruling in our favor. So the metes and bounds is no longer debatable. The arbitral ruling has awarded the Philippines and recognized our claim vis-a-vis China. It has rejected China's 9-line, 10-line claim and has upheld the Philippines' position that what China is doing within the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines is illegal. And therefore, the debate as to whether there are metes and bounds is moot. We can debate until kingdom come, but that will not change the arbitral ruling in our favor, Mr. President.
That is not entirely correct, Mr. President, and I beg to disagree. The reason why I'm asking the gentleman for the metes and bounds to our claim on our maritime rights is because until today, I would like to believe that there has not been any specific computation or coordinates of the West Philippine Sea. I'd like to ask if is the limit of our exclusive economic zone is specifically the 200 nautical miles from our archipelagic baseline, or is it provided under Administrative Order number 29, the westernmost boundary of the Calayan Island Group, as defined under Presidential Decree 5096, or is it defined under Republic Act 9522 of 2009, or Republic Act number 12064 of 2024? The question, Mr. President, is very significant because we would like to specifically determine the extent of our West Philippine Sea. Because if we are unable to do that, baka mahirapan po tayong ipagtanggol hanggang saan ang sa atin. So can we at least have an answer?
Mr. President, hindi na natin kailangang ipagtanggol ang nasa atin. Napagpasahan na ng International Arbitral Tribunal. There is nothing to defend. It has been resolved in our favor. What we have to now defend and uphold is the ruling.
Mr. President, I think the gentleman from Pampanga and Quezon City is looking at the arbitral award as it is. I'm not saying that, of course, we won the EEZ, but it is still incumbent for our country, Mr. President, to define our West Philippine Sea. Because until now, as we will discuss later with the indulgence of the gentleman, we need to look at the coordinates, Mr. President. I'm only asking whether the basis of the West Philippine Sea is the 200 nautical miles from the archipelagic baselines. Because as the defense establishment say it, Mr. President, it is the approximation of our exclusive economic zone. Our exclusive economic zone is 200 nautical miles from our archipelagic baseline. So can we assume that are we proceeding from there? Or are we defining the extent of our WPS from Executive or Administrative Order number 29, Presidential Decree 5096, Republic Act 9522, or Republic Act 12064? Kasi kailangan po natin ma-define muna, Mr. President. Totoo po na ang arbitral award, in-invalidate po yung 9-dash line. Tama po yun. Pero hanggang doon lang, hindi naman sinabi ng arbitral award kung hanggang saan ang nahangganan ng ating West Philippine Sea. That's why I am asking the gentleman kung alam po niya kung saan tayo magsisimula para sa ganon, i-determine natin, i-ascertain natin ang extent ng ating West Philippine Sea.
Yes, if I may reiterate, Mr. President, we see the point being raised by Senator Marcoleta. He mentioned Administrative Order number 29, which defines the West Philippine Sea. It was issued in 2012. On the other hand, in addition, we have the Philippine Maritime Zones Act, or Republic Act number 12064, enacted in 2024. These are government records that recognize the West Philippine Sea in official documents, and under the UNCLOS, which grants the Philippines the EEZ extending to up to 200 nautical miles from its coastline. This is the law. There is an administrative order, and of course there is UNCLOS. It is the position of this representation, Mr. President, that all three, UNCLOS, Administrative Order number 29, issued in 2012, and Republic Act 12064, enacted in 2024, are sufficient to be able to establish our exclusive economic zone as well as our territorial sea, Mr. President.
So, Mr. President, if the answer is that Administrative Order number 29, which is the westernmost boundary of the Calayan Island Group, as defined under Presidential Decree 1596, is the very source of our determination of the West Philippine Sea.
Together with, Mr. President, the Philippine Maritime Zones Act, taken in conjunction with. So it's the AO 29 as well as RA 12064 and finally UNCLOS.
Yes, Mr. President, isa-isa lang natin. Doon muna tayo sa Administrative Order number 29, which confirmed Presidential Decree 1596. Mr. President, under PD 1596, President Marcos Sr. drew boundaries around certain features of this Spratly Island and called the enclosed area as Kalayaan Island Group. At that time, there was no exclusive economic zone yet under the UNCLOS. However, is the Honorable Senator aware that in 2016, the South China Sea Arbitral Tribunal declared the boundaries of the Kalayaan Island Group as contrary to the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea?
Well, Mr. President, I'm not familiar with the particular findings, but that is, to me, again, immaterial in the context of the award of the International Tribunal.
That will not be immaterial, Mr. President, with all due respect. Kasi nga po talagang sinisino natin, dinidetermine natin kung gagamitin po natin yung Presidential Decree 1596. Sabi po ng Arbitral Tribunal, contrary po yun sa UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. Basahin po ninyo yung Arbitral Award. Nandun po yun sa paragraphs 573 to paragraphs 576. Sabi po niya, China and the Philippines has no right to enclose the Spratly Islands, with the system of archipelagic or strait baselines, as though there is a single group islands or an offshore archipelago. Yun po yung sinabi. Kaya nga po, I am pointing this out, hindi natin magagamit yung 1596, not even Administrative Order 29. Kung sasabihin naman po natin, Mr. President, yung 9522 na banggit nila, is the Honorable Senator aware that Republic Act 9522 merely defined the Philippine archipelagic baselines from which to measure the territorial sea, exclusive economic zone, and continental shelf. Yun lang po ang ginawa noong 9522. Wala po siyang kinalaman in the determination of the exact area of the West Philippine Sea. Na-define lang po yung mga baselines natin para doon natin kwentahin yung ating territorial sea, yung ating exclusive economic zone, at saka yung ating continental shelf. Alam natin, ang EEZ at saka continental shelf, 200 nautical miles from the baseline. Territorial sea is 12 nautical miles from the baseline. Ngayon po, Mr. President, kung halimbawa ay babanggitin natin ang Republic Act 12064, ito po yung 2024 law, ang may problema po ito Section 2 of Republic Act number 12064 defines the West Philippine Sea as follows. The maritime zones of the Philippines on the western side of the Philippine archipelago, including the Luzon Sea and the territorial seas of Bajo de Masinloc and the maritime features of the Kalayaan Island Group, shall collectively called the West Philippine Sea. Ano pong problema nito, Mr. President, Your Honor? Based on that definition, would the Honorable Senator agree that the westernmost limits has two elements? Yung 200 nautical mile limit of the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone and Continental Shelf, and the 12 nautical limit of the enclave territorial sea of high tide elevations of Kalayaan Island Group, including those outside the Philippines Exclusive Economic Zone. Hindi rin po natin magagamit yung 200 nautical mile limit, Mr. President. Bakit po? Alam po ba ng ating honorable gentleman from Pampanga and Quezon City na pag ginamit po natin yung West Philippine Sea na 200 nautical mile limit ng ating exclusive economic zone, 17 features po ng Kalayaan Island Group ang mawawala sapagkat wala po siya. Hindi siya na-enclose ng 200 nautical miles. Alam din po ba ng ating honorable senator that four of those features would fall outside the definition of the West Philippine Sea as occupied by the Philippines. Ito pong apat na ito ay okupado na ng ating bansa. Ngunit wala po siya sa 200 nautical miles eh. Katulad po ng Pag-asa na tinatawag na Tito Island. It's 227 nautical miles to Palawan. Parola or Northeast K, 240.2 nautical miles to Palawan. Kota or Laita Island is 207 nautical miles to Palawan. And Lakiam K, 203.7 nautical miles to Palawan. Are you aware, Mr. President, that these features are separated by high seas? Ito pa po ang problema eh. Kaya po nagiging importante na kailangan po natin munang pag-aralan hanggang saan eksakto po ang coordinates ba ng ating West Philippine Sea. Dito po sa binabanggit nating mga batas sa ngayon, kung titingnan natin, hindi po natin sila magagamit, Mr. President. Kaya napakahirap po ngayon nating sagupain yung mga pananaw na parang may nag-aangkin ng atin pero hindi pa natin ma-define kung ano talaga yung atin. Kaya po dito ako nagsisimula, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I may be allowed, again, I don't see the point. Are we trying to say here that the arbitral ruling was erroneous and therefore we should stop claiming what was awarded us? I don't see the logic, Mr. President. We were awarded by the arbitral tribunal. It is ours. Now, is the gentleman saying the tribunal was mistaken and therefore what was awarded to us should not have been awarded to us because of these problematic, well, at least from the point of view of the good senator, problematic definition of what the West Philippine Sea is? I beg to disagree, Mr. President. Besides, the arbitral ruling did not touch on the issues being raised today by the good senator. And even if it did, assuming it did, hypothetically, we were still awarded, and we were our claim and our rights were recognized, and China's rights were rejected. Are we saying here now, Mr. President, that we have to go back to the arbitral ruling, to the tribunal, present a new definition of what constitutes West Philippine Sea so that they can amend or they can set aside the award? Please, I would appreciate being clarified.
Let me clarify, Mr. President. Are we getting the impression that the West Philippine Sea was awarded to us by the arbitral tribunal on a silver platter? Sinabi po niya kung nasaan yung ating mga coordinates?
Well, Mr. President,
Tayo po ay merong entitlement sa 200...
Again, Mr. President, assuming that these have to be defined, I think we can define that by Philippine law. If, assuming, I'm without conceding that there is no definition because we believe it has been properly defined, and yeah. The maritime base, we were not in the Senate then, but
Both of you were not decided. We already discussed it. We had the big billboard. It was, Mr. President, may I, Mr. President?
The majority leader
With
is
indulgence to
recognized.
those who were
With
not
the permission
here.
of course,
Yes, with the permission of the two gentlemen.
Senators Pangilinan and Rodante.
Yes, for the indulgence of our colleagues who were not here at the 19th Congress, namely Senator Pangilinan, yourself, Mr. President Pro Tempore, the Senate President, and Senator Marcoleta. We had a long discussion on the floor approving the baseline, Philippine Baseline Maritime Zones Act. Dalawang batas yung pinasa ni Senator Tolentino, who was also the majority leader at the time. And I can clearly recall he would always perform his explanation on the middle podium with a blackboard, whiteboard rather, with a map. Pinapakita niya, pure like a teacher, like a professor, showing the map of the Philippines and what it covers. So meron na po tayong approved and signed by the President a Republic Act on these two measures. It was the Philippine Baseline Law and the Philippine Archipelagic Sea Lanes. So maybe the two gentlemen can look into these two laws to see the exact coordinates that we approved as a law, as laws. This is Republic Act number 12065 and 12064.
With the permission of the three gentlemen, the Senate President is recognized.
With the permission of the gentlemen, because this will be an interjection, just not really to join the conundrum, but Mr. President, I ask a question. Yung ban China, meron silang coordinates? Yung 9-dash line nila?
Wala.
Wala eh. Tayo nga may baseline eh. May baseline, 10-dash line na. Oh, may coordinates ba? Wala eh. Tayo nga may baseline survey law eh. Sila wala eh. Kung ano maangkinin kanila eh. So I want to find out where are the coordinates of China in the West Philippine Sea.
Mr. President, may I request that pakiano nyo ngayong number 3. Yung
Mr.
South
President,
China Sea.
while we're doing some administrative matters, just for the record, because earlier our data or our assertion that about 500,000 square kilometers of our exclusive economic zone and territorial sea and sovereign waters is being claimed. This was a lecture by retired Supreme Court Justice Carpio in his paper, West Philippine Sea Lecture, in the Philippine Social Science Council, hosted it February 2016. And I quote his, for the Philippines, what is at stake in the South China Sea are, number one, about 80% of its EEZ, comprising 381,000 square kilometers of maritime space, including the entire Reed Bank and part of the Malampaya gas field. And number two, 100% of its exclusive continental shelf, estimated at over 150,000 square kilometers of maritime space. Either the Philippines keeps this, and I quote, maritime entitlements, or we lose them to China, according to the retired justice. And he added, effectively, China's 9-dash line claim encroaches on over 531,000 square kilometers of Philippine EEZ and continental shelf, including all the fishery, oil, gas, and mineral resources found within this vast area, which is larger than the total land area of the Philippines. This Chinese aggression, according to Chief former Justice Carpio, is the gravest external threat to the Philippines since World War II.
Mr. President, ang binanggit niya kanina ay pinagsama-sama po niya yung exclusive economic zone at saka yung continental shelf. Talaga po nga abot kayo ng 500,000 square kilometers. Ang pinag-uusapan po natin, exclusive economic zone lang. Kaya po
Mr.
tayo
President.
nakukumpyos. Kanina po tinatanong kung merong coordinates ang China. Ayan po yung mapa ng China. Makikita po ninyo yung 6.1. Kapag yan po ay tiningnan ninyo at pinag-aralan po ninyo yan, Yan po ay nakatala doon sa International Hieroglyphics Organization or S23. Lahat po ng coordinates nandyan. Kaya nga po pinoproblema natin, hanggang ngayon, wala pa po tayong ganyan. Sana man lang yung West Philippine Sea, kapag ka lahat po ng kailangan ng United Nations, kasi bago po tayo makapagpatala ng ating sariling pangalan ng dagat, katulad ng West Philippine Sea, hindi lamang po declaration ang kailangan natin eh. Nagdi-declare tayo ng 200 nautical miles. Hindi naman po tayo nagdi-deposit ng mapa na may coordinates doon sa United Nations. Wala pong mangyayari. Yun po yung proseso eh. Tingnan po ninyo yan. 6.1, yan po yung South China Sea. Hindi po ninyo makikita ang West Philippine Sea. Kaya po tayo nagtatalo dahil yung ating West Philippine Sea, kailanman hindi mag-a-appear dyan hanggat hindi po nagagawa ni Commodore Tariela yung dapat niyang gawin. Imbes na gawa na siya ng gawa ng caricature, dapat mag-submit na siya nung mga coordinates na kailangan po para ngayon makapagpatala tayo ng sarili nating pangalan ng dagat. Ito nga po kaya ako, kahit napakahirap, ay gusto nating pag-aralang mabuti kasi dito po nagkakaroon ng hindi pagkakaunawaan. Akala natin may nangunguha ng saang ganang atin, samantalang yung sa ganang atin, hindi pa naman natin alam kung hanggang saan ba siya. Ang maganda sana, yung talagang exact coordinates, makukuha natin. Pero paano po natin magagawa, Mr. President? Ino-occupy natin, for example, yung munisipyo ng Pag-asa. Labas yun sa ating exclusive economic zone. Paano natin guguhitan yun halimbawa? Labas sa ating exclusive economic zone, samantalang yung Pag-asa, nandun sa high seas. Hindi po pwede mangyayari, Mr. President, because that is violative of the UNCLOS. Hindi po tayo pwedeng tumahak sa high seas. At magliliprag po siya from the exclusive economic zone para enclose niya lamang, for example, yung Parola, yung T2, yung sinabi nating 4 kanina na bahagi na inoccupy ng ating bansa, ngunit labas po ng exclusive economic zone. Paano ngayon yun? E di kapag ka sinabi natin, we were awarded our exclusive economic zone, o umalis na po tayo doon sa mga features na inoccupy natin ngayon, simply because they are not enclosed by the West Philippine Sea na binabanggit natin. Kaya po ako nagsisimula dyan, Mr. President. Hindi po totoo na como sinabi ng arbitral award. Wala yung 9 dash line mo, China. Totoo naman yun eh. Because China was unable to prove by historic rights na talagang nasakop niya through the 9 dash line. Pero maliban doon, walang ginawa yung arbitral award eh. The arbitral tribunal did not adjudicate yung pamumosisyon nila sa mga features. Hindi naman niya sinabi, China, umalis ka na dyan sa mga inoccupy mong features. Meron ba siya sinabing gano'n? Wala po. And China continues to occupy those features. Meron din tayo. Meron din ang Vietnam. Kaya po disputed ngayon eh. Kahit na po in-award ang West Philippine Sea o yung ating exclusive economic zone, it's still a disputable waters. Dahil nga, wala pa tayong coordinates na isasubmit na nire-require po sa atin. This is the whole point, Mr. President.
Yes. If we may be allowed. Mr. President, gaya ng nabanggit kanina ng ating mga kasamahan, noong 2024 na ipasa yung RA 12064 nga at doon mismo dinebate Section 14, other maritime jurisdictions, the Philippines shall exercise all other maritime rights and jurisdictions in accordance with the UNCLOS, the South China Sea Arbitration, case number 2013-19, international law and other pertinent and regulations of the Philippines. Mr. President, we beg to disagree that the coordinates are not clear. that we have not been able to determine it. We have by law, we have by administrative order, and we have by the arbitral ruling. All these should suffice, Mr. President, for us to assert that China is illegally occupying parts of our exclusive economic zone and is claiming likewise 150,000 square kilometers of our continental shelf and 381,000 square kilometers of our EEZ. I mean, that should suffice for this, at least for this resolution to be passed. For the resolution that we are now tackling be adopted, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
In addition, Mr.
unfortunately-
President, if I may, the Kalayaan Group of Islands is Kalayaan is a municipality of Palawan.
Pag-asa is a barangay.
Yes. And therefore, the exclusive economic zone as defined in UNCLOS provides that it is a sea area extending up to 200 nautical miles from a coastal state's baseline. So the baseline would be the Kalayaan group and 200 nautical miles from the Kalayaan group. So I do not see how the Kalayaan Islands is outside of our exclusive economic zone. I beg to disagree, Mr. President.
Just for the record, no, the Pag-asa Island is a barangay of the Kalayaan Island Group under the province of Palawan.
Yes. And it is 445 kilometers away from Puerto Princesa.
Mr. President, the problem is under Section 2 of Republic Act 12064, which defines the West Philippine Sea as follows. The maritime zones of the Philippines on the western side of the Philippine archipelago, including the Luzon Sea and the territorial seas of Bao de Masinloc and the maritime features of the Kalayaan Island Group, shall be collectively called the West Philippine Sea. What is the problem there, Mr. President? Yun nga po kasing Pag-asa Island at saka yung Parola Island, nakasama po ng KIG, ay labas po doon sa West Philippine Sea. At ito po ay blurred by the high seas that separate them from the rest of the Kalayaan Island Group. So let me show, pwede bang pakita yung isa pang mapa? Map number 1.
Ulitin.
Ayan po, Mr. President. This is a map produced by the US-funded think tank called National Bureau of Asian Research. Dito sa mapang ito po, the area that is shaded in deep yellow is the Philippine Territorial Sea, while the area shaded in light yellow is the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone and Continental Shelf. The area shaded in blue is the high seas. On the map are small features around which circles have been drawn. Some features are inside the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone, while others are in the high seas. The circles drawn around these features are the enclave territorial seas. The features and circles are in different colors to represent the state occupying them. The features occupied by the Philippines are in yellow. Diyan po makikita ninyo, Mr. President, meron po tayong occupied na features na talagang labas nga sa, kagaya ng binanggit natin kanina, labas sa ating exclusive economic zone. There are 4 features in yellow that are occupied by the Philippines but are in the high seas. Other features that are occupied by China and Vietnam that are in the high seas, but they are also being claimed by the Philippines. Given the situation, how can we draw the metes and bounds of the Philippine West, the West Philippine Sea? Ito yung tinatanong ko kanina, kung gusto natin pong isama yung mga features which are outliers, meaning to say they are lying outside the exclusive economic zone, paano po tayong papayagan na gawin yun? May encroach po natin pati yung high seas. The UNCLOS, Mr. President, prohibits us from enclosing the high seas, and international tribunals have nullified boundaries that leapfrog. Hindi po natin sila pwedeng i-connecta. Kaya nga po, why even under Republic Act 12064, the limits of the West Philippine Sea cannot be drawn with precision. Yun po yung sinasabi natin. Hindi po natin magagamit yung mga batas na ginawa natin dahil meron pong problema. At makikita po ninyo yung mga features. For example, yung nandyan po sa loob ng ating West Philippine Sea. Makikita nyo yung mga circles in blue. These are occupied by other nations. Pero doon sa ating memorial na sinabit po sa arbitral tribunal, Mr. President, ang Pilipinas nag-agree na lahat po ng yan ay hindi na natin naaariin. Meaning to say, there'll be reduction po yan sa ating West Philippine Sea. Ganun po, kinompromise natin eh. Basahin po natin yung award. So, hindi, ang dami pong nawawala sa West Philippine Sea natin.
Mr. President, if we may, the declaration under PD 1596 that the KIG is part of Philippine territory, PD 1596 and its validity was never put in issue in the arbitration case, and the tribunal did not have any jurisdiction to rule on its validity. In other words, this is outside the issue of the award. And if there are concerns about the validity of PD 1596 and the concerns that there are certain areas outside of what has been declared as our economic zone, although prior to that was declared part of Philippine territory, then let's have legislation, remedial legislation to amend, debate it. If the good senator believes that should be part of Philippine territory and would like to amend PD 1596 or affirm it, then let's debate it on the floor by way of proposed legislation. But in the context of the arbitral ruling, Mr. President, I will again point out that this debate, no matter how lengthy, will not change the ruling, which just in our favor, and therefore we should defend and uphold it. Rather than go into a question of, wait, sandali lamang, kasi yung arbitral ruling na yun, hindi sinama yung ilang mga nasa Kalayaan Island Group. So dapat, wag natin i-recognize yung award na yan. Hindi naman po tayo papayag doon. Hindi po ba?
Hindi po ganun ang punto natin, Mr. President. Kung sakaling tayo po ay may karapatan talaga, at meron naman talaga tayong karapatan sa ating West Philippine Sea, na sa ngayon ay ina-approximate nila na ito na nga yung ating exclusive economic zone, kinakailangan naman nating makita yung hangganan para sa ganun maipagtanggol natin ang lahat ng saganang atin. Nagbabudget tayo, binibigyan natin ang ating Department of National Defense. Ang daming mga features na wala sa ating West Philippine Sea, na wala doon sa ating exclusive economic zone. Wala namang, nandun outliers po siyang gano'n. Pagkatapos, sinasabi ng 1596, atin yun, pero sabi ng arbitral tribunal, sabi ng award, sinabi na nga natin, paragraphs 573 to paragraphs 576, neither the Philippines North China has the right to enclose that part of the Sprat list. Ibig sabihin, ninalipay niya po yun eh. So wala din yun eh. Kinakailangan nating itama lahat. Sangayon din sa UNCLOS na doon naman ay signatory tayo. Ito po yung kanina ko pa gustong ipaliwanag. Walang masama na yung ating saganang atin, pag-aari natin, madetermina natin. Halimbawa, binigyan tayo ng isang pag-aari, isang sukat ng lupa. Sinabi ng ating kaibigan, mula sa bundok na ito hanggang doon sa bundok na yun, sa iyo yan. Alam po ninyo, pag hindi natin natituluhan yan, nakuha yung kabuuan kung hanggang saan ang ating pag-aari, mahihirapan lang tayo. Kaya po nagkakaroon tayo ng pag-aaway, ngayon lamang po kaya nakikita na natin ang talagang pangangailangan na pag-aralan nating mabuti muna ito. Kesa sasabihin natin, gagawa ng halimbawa ng caricature ang isang Commodore natin na ilalagay niya sa nakakatuwa at pangit na itsura ang leader ng isang bansa. Imbes na yun ang gawin niya, siguro kinakailangan muna nating i-determine with precise precision at with coordinates para sa ganon, alam na natin, maiguguhit na natin hindi lamang sa tayo lang ang nakakaalam ng ating West Philippine Sea, pati po doon sa S-23. Ito po yung International Hydrographics Organization. Matatala na yung ating West Philippine Sea. Magkakaroon na po ng coordinates. Kagaya po ng pinakita natin kanina na South China Sea is designated by 6.1. Yun po sana yung dapat natin munang gawin.
Mr. President, just before
With the permission of the two gentlemen, Senator
before
Risa
I yield the
Ontiveros.
floor, Mr. President, to just
Yes,
very quickly.
Yes,
Mr. President, yung binanggit ni Commodore Tariela, dinepensahan na ng ating Department of National Defense at ng Armed Forces of the Philippines. Tapos ngayon, narito tayo, may Senate resolution, sumasang-ayon at sinasang-ayunan ang posisyon ng Department of National Defense at ang Armed Forces of the Philippines sa mga bitiw na salita ni Commodore Tariela. Hindi ba dapat susugan natin at suportahan natin at we rally behind our armed forces, our Department of National Defense, rather than kowtow, not kowtow, but rather than give China the benefit of the doubt as regards their motivations in attacking one of our men in uniform? We have to defend and support the Department of National Defense and the Armed Forces of the Philippines. It's as simple as that, Mr. President.
Yes, with the permission of the two gentlemen. Senator Risa Ontiveros is recognized to interject.
Salamat, Mr. President. Sinusuportahan ko yung kahuling sinabi ni Senator Pangilinan. Dagdag pa po, ilang beses ko na rin po narinig mula sa Ginoo, mula sa Pampanga and Tarlac, yung di umano'y coordinates ng China sa South China Sea o ng 9-dash line. At ipinakita po kanina yung mapa ng International Hydrographic Organization. Sa research po, ang International Hydrographic Organization o IHO is a technical, not a political organization. And its map delineations do not constitute legal recognition of sovereignty, such as China's 9-dash line. So ang ipinakita pong mapa kanina ng good gentleman, mapa ng IHO na may mga notation na 6.1, 6. Kung ano-ano pa, hindi po yan coordinates. Mga numero lamang sa mapa. Further po sa research, the 9-dash line representing China's expansive disputed territorial claims in the South China Sea has no official, fixed, or internationally recognized geographic coordinates. Kaya yung sinasabi pong may coordinates na ang China sa South China Sea, pati sa ating West Philippine Sea, na may coordinates sila sa 9-dash line, wala po. That U-shaped dotted line, which covers roughly 90% of the sea, is vaguely defined and can shift across maps. So ngayon pa lang po, i-disabuse na po natin ang ating kaisipan na may coordinates ang China dyan sa napakalawak na claims niya, pati sa ating karagatan. Salamat, Mr.
I'm
President.
not very sure about this, but the discussion on the floor may have some national security implication. So the same concern was expressed by no less than the Senate President. So yes, Mr. Senate President.
Yes,
you are recognized.
you're right. We are discussing a resolution which expresses the sense of the Senate supposed to be. The debate that I have been listening to is fine if we're debating on a piece of legislation addressing this, no, but it's not. So I'm worried that we are already trampling over issues of national security, and that is my question, Mr. President. What do you think?
Yes, 1 minute suspension.